afternoon and welcome to Countdown to Daytona. I am Dan Lucas.
And I'm Kevin Conley. Happy to have you this afternoon.
Well, if you saw the show yesterday, we had a star-studded lineup, wonderful drivers. We're going to hear from one of them here in a little bit today because there's a little bit of a topic that we want to discuss a little deeper. But, I mean, first of all, before we talk about the Daytona 500, we have breaking news on Countdown to Daytona. Kevin, you went around Daytona International Speedway in a car today. How fast did you go?
I got up to about 160 miles an hour.
160?
I was the passenger in the experience, the NASCAR ride-along experience, and it was fun. I can only imagine what these guys do at close to 200 miles an hour, inches apart. There was no other cars around us. I certainly got a greater appreciation for what these guys do day in and day out, week in and week out, so close together. At 160, you certainly got the sense of speed that they enjoy. Two things that really struck me. One, how smooth the track was. Right. There wasn't a whole lot of bumps. And number two, when you went down into the corner, you could actually feel the G-forces pushing you down into the seat. And I can only imagine how greater those forces are at close to 200 miles an hour. And again, we were only doing 155, 160.
And it wasn't hot enough yet, so the track wasn't, what do they say here? It wasn't greasy.
Yeah, no. It was still green.
Well, that's good stuff. Well, we have a wonderful guest here with us today, and she was with us last year. And we could have her really for about 3 hours, if she had 3 hours. The wonderful Holly Cain is here, NASCAR's National Wire Services writer. And if you read any race report, any daily story on NASCAR from all the stops, that's Holly. You're reading her work. So, Holly, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Us.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, Holly, this is obviously the Daytona 500. Every year it's the first race, so everybody's excited, but there's always storyline after storyline. And before we get into the storylines of the sport and what we may see here, what did we see last week? Because it was the clash race, an incident between Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski, and the image I had was Keselowski hitting the ambulance.
Yeah, that and when he got out of the car immediately and he threw his hands up in the air. He was really upset.
So are we making a big deal out of this, or is this something that we probably should keep our eye on?
Well, one of the other people involved in it, Joey Logano, his teammates said, you know what, that's Daytona racing. That's what happens here. And of course, he hated the fact that his teammate was somebody that got collected and all of that. And Brad led the most laps of that race, actually, and had to go out like that. But I think Joey and even Kyle Busch, with whom he collided, and then they collected Brad, both of them felt like this is kind of what you expect at Daytona. So we'll see how that goes forward. I know that Joey and Brad have had some discussions since that to see how that goes forward, but I think that's kind of what you have to expect.
I'll tell you, we did not hear from Joey Logano in our media day coverage. We did, however, have Brad Keselowski sit down with us. And let me say this, because Brad's this guy, he can have his own show. He's very entertaining, very happy-go-lucky guy. I thought he was a little bit more subdued than normal. I don't think it's a bad thing, but he had some interesting things to say regarding this.
Well, when we brought the topic up, he kind of wanted to move on quickly. Yeah. And he made it a very clear point that the discussions were between him and Joey and nobody else.
Yeah, well, let's take a listen. In case anybody missed, let's hear what he had to say.
All right, so seriously, have you calmed down from that incident? I mean, I know it's been a few days, but
well, I don't like losing, if that's what you're asking.
No, I'm not asking that.
Am I as mad as I was in the moments directly after? No. Am I happy? No. I want to win races. When you got a chance to win races and you don't, I'm not going to be happy. So.
Have you talked to Jimmie or Joey about it? I mean, have you had a good conversation?
We've had our conversations, but those are between him and I.
Gotcha.
When you watch, do you go back and watch those at all? Not just to see, I mean, but maybe, listen, out here, anything can happen at any time. And sometimes it's mechanical, sometimes it's a calculated risk that went wrong. But when you watch that, do you say, all right, maybe I need to be here next time, or try to set myself up to avoid?
If you're not studying, this is all situational awareness, and you want to make moments in the blink of an eye, and you need to be prepared to do that.
All right, so I had asked Brad okay, let's go beyond the personal side of this. Do you go back and watch this? And then, Holly, I'll ask you this. Do you watch this from a standpoint of what can I now learn regarding the Daytona 500, no matter who it is, if there's a little dispute or anything? But was I in an unlucky position, or did I do something that maybe I could have avoided this? He said, I will look at this and learn from this.
Well, I was going to say, I bet Joey would suggest it would be a good idea for them both to look at it. But they are top-rated drivers on one of the best teams in the series. They know how to handle this, and the Daytona 500 is the biggest race of the year. So I have no doubt that they will handle it between themselves. They were going to meet up at Disney World, but Joey Logano said, I never saw him there, so they kept the happiest place on earth happy. They handled it together in the garage, and I think they'll go forward just fine.
That's probably one of them didn't get the fast pass at Disney. That's why. He was stuck in a 2-hour line in Star Wars land.
Possibly.
Exactly. Well, another driver we had with us yesterday was John Hunter Nemechek. And, he sat down in the chair, and I looked at him, and I immediately thought, man, I remember you when you were this tall, helping your dad, carrying his sunglasses for him here, and you're going to race in the Daytona 500. How crazy is this?
Yeah, it really is. And in fact, the Nemecheks are from my hometown of Lakeland, Florida, in Central Florida. So I have known that family forever and covered Joe, and I know how proud Joe is and his entire family. And John Hunter Nemechek is a fantastic driver. He's a great young driver, and I think he's going to make some noise in the race. I really do.
He's gotten some very good experience in the Truck Series, and it doesn't seem like they've rushed him to the Cup Series,
which is key. That sometimes happens.
I think a lot of rookies have been sort of pushed along maybe a little too fast, but this year's rookie class very, very strong. How do you see it? Who's the cream of the crop of the rookies?
Well, certainly at least 4 or 5 of them have raced together at other series, whether it was in the Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series or whether it was the Xfinity Series. And definitely 3 of the top as well that you have, including last year's Xfinity champion 2-time Tyler Reddick, who's won the last 2 years, certainly Cole Custer. Those are going to be guys, and Christopher Bell, who is very highly touted and is a Toyota driver. I think those 3 and John Hunter Nemechek will probably kind of be the people that get a lot of eyes at the very beginning. But this is a group I fully expect to see one of them win a race this year. I really do.
Wow, that's very saying something. So I forget who we were talking to yesterday, and I mentioned I didn't want to call these guys young guns. I was referring to the fact that we've had the young guns, and he goes, "Young guns is over, man."
Yeah.
And I go, "I know. You guys are now the old guys, the young guns." So it's definitely a changing of the guard, I guess you could say, in this sport, and we're seeing it in a team like Hendrick that has been dominant for so many years, and now all of a sudden you've got a young core of drivers trying to get that team back into the top of the game, which right now it seems like everybody's chasing Joe Gibbs Racing.
Absolutely, and an even younger core when Jimmie Johnson retires, right? So you've got all of a sudden Chase Elliott is the big veteran in the group, and he's still in his early to mid-20s. So I think Hendrick, they always qualify very well for the Daytona 500, and certainly a lot of wins from the team historically. So I think they are definitely someone to be looking at. And I found an interesting note today. There's only 2 drivers in the field that have won more than one Daytona 500. So that shows you what how much motivation there is for a whole lot of people on the grid.
That's a lot of parity throughout the sport.
Stuff.
The driver who was making the joke about the young guns, that was Kevin Harvick, who is well into his 40s, saying that it's all the old guys.
I remember.
He goes, it's all the old guys who are winning.
Still doing it. That was his point.
That's right. And of course, he just signed a contract extension. He's going to stay in Stewart-Haas Racing through 2023. So he's in a good spot. He feels like he's in a good spot, and Kevin Harvick is certainly a guy that has performed not only the last few years, but certainly expects to perform, moving forward for the next couple of years, and in the Daytona 500 on Sunday.
Holly, you mentioned Jimmie Johnson, obviously the elder statesman there on the Hendrick team, and this is kind of a swan song for him. don't know. He didn't really hint yesterday that he would be kind of emotional about this. At some point during the Daytona 500, he's going to glance up at something he's probably never seen in all of his years, and it's going to mean something to him. But what do you think is going through his mind entering the Daytona 500? Because somewhere in there, there's still the competitor that wants to win this.
Absolutely. He is so highly motivated to win the Daytona 500. Think about what that would do to start off your final season. I don't know statistically if anyone has done that in their last season, having announced their retirement or not, but it's certainly something that Jimmie wants to do, and I think it sets the tone for his season. He hasn't won in a couple of years, and so he wants to go out with a victory, and what better trophy to have than another Daytona 500?
Yeah, 95 races since Jimmie Johnson has won.
Yeah, that's
Sprint Cup
saying
race.
something. I didn't realize yesterday that he's run the Baja.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I've run it. And I asked him, I go, Jimmie, listen, I've seen it on TV. I've seen the videos. I think those guys are nuts. What did you think? And he goes, thought we were nuts.
Actually, then he said he thought his parents were nuts for allowing him to
do
run
it
in the Baja.
But Holly, this is a guy who still has competitive juices. He's not going to go grab the fishing rod or become an elite golfer. He wants to do some racing. What do you think's in his plans?
Well, he certainly mentioned yesterday. In fact, he went to the IndyCar Media Day, which I thought was very interesting for our NASCAR champion. But he went to IndyCar Media Day, said he's open to doing some open wheel races. He's also very interested in running sports cars. He used to run the Rolex 24 here at Daytona and do very well in it. So I think Jimmie has a lot of racing left in him. He's so young.
Yes.
You know, I mean, when I first started covering the sport many years ago, you raced until you were almost 60, and now these guys are thinking more in the early 40s. And so I think he's got a lot of racing left in him, and I think there's going to be some high-profile starts for him.
Very interesting.
You know, salaries certainly have a lot to do with that. Drivers certainly made a lot more money in today's NASCAR than drivers did way back in the day, so they felt like they had to race longer, you know, to earn their money. But yeah, Jimmie Johnson, he does not like to use the word retirement, because he is not retiring from racing. And you know, and Jeff Gordon was the same way.
I feel like a lot of them. Dale Earnhardt Jr. was the same way. I mean,
it's okay. They can use that word. It's okay. But certainly Jimmie Johnson has made it perfectly clear that he does want to race. And the IndyCar, probably a street car event or a road course.
A road
type.
course event is what he indicated he was most likely. I wouldn't even be surprised to see him race again in NASCAR. I think he has the wonderful ability to kind of pick and choose, and who wouldn't want to put him in a car if Jimmie Johnson comes and says, hey, I'd love to do this race again.
I was going to say, if it doesn't hit him, let's say it's not a retirement, it'll hit him in 2021 when he comes here and he's dressed like us. And he's not in the field. That's when it will hit him. You know, one of the drivers that I find fascinating this week, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who's the pole winner, obviously, the fast lap, gave credit to the Hendrick engines. However, team-wise, this has been I don't know if the word turbulent is fair, but the off-season for him was a season of change. And I would have to imagine that the human nature side of this is maybe a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. What do you think that pole win meant to him?
Well, he kind of alluded to it. He didn't go so far as to call it a chip on his shoulder, but I think it was a definite nice little smile to himself, right? You know, that pole was huge. Ricky moves from the Roush Racing team, which actually fielded his car when he won the Xfinity Series championships. So it's a big deal, and he's fortunate he has his old or former crew chief with him. So I think that's nice to have that pairing, and the result is a pole. This is not only Ricky's third pole of his whole career, but also JTG Doherty's only their third career pole, and first that wasn't on a road course. So I think Ricky has a lot to prove, and all of his wins have come on super speedway races like we're going to have in the Daytona 500. I think he has to be considered a favorite. If anywhere, this is the place he could do it.
You know, on super speedways, in particular in his career, I don't want to use the word reckless, but he's not afraid to put the nose of his car in certain places, and sometimes that triggers accidents. He sort of has a reputation on super speedway races as being a little on the ragged edge.
But as he said in Media Day, only twice.
Holly, when we get here Sunday, no matter what happens, and obviously we run the duels tonight, so we'll set the field, and I thought the drivers they said, you know, it does matter where you start here, because the first quarter to a third of the race, till you get to that first green, in the first stage, it does matter how you're going to set yourself up for later. But do you think in the end that we're going to be chasing Joe Gibbs cars?
Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of people I hear think that the Toyotas are going to be as good as they've ever been for the Daytona 500. So I think that's certainly something. It's funny. It seems like you either want to start at the front or the back. There seems to be a lot of worry about what's going to happen in the middle of it all. But, you know, I definitely think the Toyota cars are going to be fast. And Joe Gibbs, clearly, I mean, after the season he had last year, can you imagine starting off and winning back-to-back Daytona 500s? That would be huge. So I think we will hear from him. The great thing about the Daytona 500, though, is that it does give everyone that feeling of I can do it. Not just because it's the first race of the season, but because in this particular manner of racing, they really can. You can have a small team, you can have a rookie, you can have people like that feel like they have every bit as much of a competitive opportunity as maybe some of the established teams.
Yeah, especially when the big one happens and a lot of the big cars or the fast cars get taken out. Certainly that opens the door for some of those smaller teams, you know, to kind of slide in there, maybe get a top 10, find themselves in a position, maybe with 10 laps to go to have a chance. So that's the great thing about this race.
I agree. You might have heard a engine roar past us. I believe the Truck Series is on the track for practice. Is that correct? I think they're before the Cup cars today.
Yes.
So the Cup cars, if you've never been to Daytona, we are situated right now between the Cup garages, and these things have been in lockdown. And this afternoon, you're going to see crew chiefs running to the garage. It's like the last day of school. Guys are going to try and get their hands on these cars. They get some laps right this afternoon. Is that correct?
I believe so. I have not looked at the schedule, but I believe they do go in because they're racing tomorrow.
Yeah, then they'll set the field with the qualifying races. Yeah, tonight's race.
Sorry.
And there is a truck going by us as we speak. And tomorrow's the trucks, man. It's all about it. I love the trucks.
Yeah.
I love the trucks. They go. You want to talk about some hardcore racing?
All year it's like
race.
that too. I mean, it really is. It is amazing. And you know what? That it just features these young guys that have been given their first big NASCAR opportunity a lot of times. And there's a great mix of those people against veterans. You know, it's really a fantastic series to watch. All the racing here, I'm just so partial to, I have to say. It never disappoints.
Yeah, I mean, I live in North Carolina, so I mean, there are a lot of tracks, you know, close to where I live. So I've been to Martinsville, and that's an entity in and of itself.
Oh, yes.
You know, and then the Charlotte Motor Speedway is, you know, such great history, and it's again a track in and of itself. Daytona, there's nothing like it. There is, you know, you can kind of try to compare it to Talladega, but Daytona is a track in and of itself, and it is so unpredictable, and I think that's why fans seem to migrate to this place and to the Daytona 500, because year in and year out, the events and the finishes are so unpredictable.
Not once did he mention a cooler or ice or beverages in the infield. Not once.
Are you saying those exist and people are rallying around those
camp out in the infield here? I mean, if you've never been to Daytona, come to the Daytona 500. If you have friends who come here, they stay in the RVs out here in the camping area. It is a world and a culture unto its own.
That's an experience.
And they are. And I'll tell you something. We sit in traffic getting out of here every night, and so you have the window down, and they're all friendly. They're like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they say, I ask them, "You guys getting crazy this week?" And they tell me the same thing. We're even crazier at Talladega. I'm like, all right, well, this looks good to me. This is good stuff. Well, Holly, thank you so much for your time today. This has been great, and I know you've been working hard all week. Got a meeting coming up here this afternoon, so stuff coming up here, and of course tonight you'll be busy.
I'm loving it.
Covering the duels.
Thank you for having me on. It was
fun.
great.
Love the insight.
Well, we're going to be out here tomorrow. The truck drivers, as we said, take center stage, and we're going to set you up for the Gander Outdoors series and get you ready for that season opener. Holly's going to be covering that, of course, and we're going to be here every day.
That's
right.
right.
It's too much fun. Of course, now Holly set the bar for our guests, so now I don't know if we're going to top this.
That's true.
I think you can feel safe.
But countdown to Daytona is tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 1
It is
o'clock.
Saturday.
Yep.
And it is Sunday, leading up to the Daytona 500.
Special guests always. We'll talk Daytona 500, get you ready for the Great American Race. It doesn't get any better than this. So for Kevin Connolly, Holly Cain, I'm Dan Lucas. We really appreciate you taking some time out on your day. Have a great rest of the afternoon, everybody.